Hey, what's up, guys? It's Rico here, CEO of SourceFind Asia, co-host of my Made in China podcast, host of the SourceFind Asia YouTube channel, of course, our Discord, so many, so many different things that we do content-wise. And I'm joined today by Isaac Hetzroni. Interesting backstory, and that's the reason why he's on the podcast. Is technically would be one of my competitors, but like as you guys know, I feel like there's enough pieces of the pie to go around, so I don't really cower from talking to my competitors. And also the background behind that as well is like I remember those one guy. His first name is Sam. I won't say his last name, but he basically was my direct competitor. And I painted him in my mind. This is early stage SourceFind Asia, like I would say the first 2 years of the business. I painted him in my mind as like a villain almost, like, you know what I mean? And then one day I met him at a conference and he made a presentation. And I was like, oh, he's a pretty nice guy, man. Like, it's like pretty good guy. Yeah, then we connected, we became friends and everything like that. And I think I've also maybe had him on the podcast. I'm not sure. Yeah, it just completely shifted my mindset in terms of how I view competition and things like that. There's healthy competition, there's unhealthy competition type of thing. And in the sourcing game, like, I mean, we're trying to supply the world. So, you know, that's enough customers. All right. So that being said, I'll let you do a little bit of introduction to yourself, Isaac.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first off, thanks for having me on the podcast, Rico. I completely agree that there's plenty of business to go around, and in our space, there almost aren't enough people, for to talk to and work with. So I really want, I'm excited to, meet you and build a relationship and see how we can help each other out because there's plenty of business to go around. So my intro, I'm Isaac Hetzroni. I'm founder of Imprint Genius. Also, I run the Sourcing Guy, which is my, personal brand and blog, which is all about product sourcing and supply chain education. In Imprint Genius, we are a product sourcing and merchandising agency based in Miami, Florida, but I am based primarily in Asia.
One of my like things that I always ask people is like when you meet somebody in a social setting, right? And somebody asks you, what do you do? How do you describe yourself?
Yeah, so I would say that I'm a product sourcing agent, and if they're gonna kind of get what that means or they don't, and most of the time, they don't. They get a little confused on what that is. So I say I help people get items from overseas. And then they give like an example. So I say, so if you need 5,000 t-shirts made, we're going to find the best factory, the best country to make it. We're going to make it for you, and then we're going to deliver it to your warehouse or office.
Depending on the situation, I mostly say like I make shit in China. I produce.
I like that.
Yeah, I've distilled it over the years because it's like a lot of times people just don't understand. Like when I say sourcing, or even if I say import export, for example, a lot of times if I say import export, they're like, you're a drug dealer, like, you know what I mean? Like it's just people get confused. So I was like, no, I make stuff in China, like, like, so yeah. All right, cool. So let's start at the beginning. You have an interesting story that your parents were running a factory for 20 years.
So I've kind of always been in manufacturing. On my mom's side, we had like a small factory that produced dancewear in Toronto. So, from like being like a toddler pretty much doing swatches and learning about fabrics. And like I would do my swatch cards and like all the 3s and 5s were backwards. That's how young I was, kind of helping out. Yeah. And then on my dad's side, my dad owns an electronics factory. Went to China about 20 years ago, went and fully opened it himself, and has been running that. So, grew up every summer kind of working with the factory, going to China with him, and then just learning every aspect of production.
Nice. I mean, that's crazy because like I know how difficult it is to just run a manufacturing business in China. I know two guys who've started factories, and they've told me how stressful it can be. So I'm just kind of curious about how your dad felt about everything, and can you give me some insight into like what it was like?
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely been a challenge. It's not easy, running a factory, let alone running a factory while living in Miami, and then not having a Chinese partner on top of that. But
Oh wow! So he didn't even have a Chinese business partner.
Yeah, so it was
Wow.
a unique time. He opened it up. It's in Suzhou, China, and at the time there was just like kind of free trade agreement going on, and it didn't require a Chinese business partner.
Yes.
So it's a wholly foreign owned. It's called like a woofie. It's a pretty unique situation,
Mm.
and he's been able to unlock a ton of amazing opportunities because of owning the factory, and then now he has like a global license for Energizer, and does a lot of really cool production, and is definitely a very higher end factory quality wise. So it's really cool to see. But he's definitely had his ups and downs and his stressful situations. It hasn't
Yeah.
been all roses.
Would you see yourself like running a factory in the future?
God no. I think maybe like I in the beginning, like I was like, oh, like I'm gonna go kind of, maybe I could run the factory and work for the company and like kind of do that post college, and then looking, going more into it. I much prefer, just being more of like the middleman, sourcing agent, working with lots of different factories and using the knowledge that I learned from like my family to, better
Yeah.
customers and
And
kind of do what
contacts
I do.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a smart move. That's a smart move. All right. So you grow up in and out of the factories, stuff like that. Where did you grow up exactly?
So I grew up, first half of my life was in Toronto, Montreal, till I was 10, and then I moved down to Miami.
Okay, cool. And then currently you are in Southeast Asia, right? In Bali.
Yeah. Yeah. So home base is Bali. A lot of people ask like, oh, like, why Bali? Like, is it for business? What I would say is that I think Bali is the best place to, live within Southeast Asia from like a lifestyle perspective. And then being this close to, China and different manufacturers, I like it as like, a good middle ground for.
That's a big part of the reason why I'm in the Philippines as well. Like Guangzhou is 2 hours away from Manila. You know, $250 plane ticket. Like it's pretty convenient. And then you have a bunch of islands. I think the Philippines has something like I don't remember the number right now, but it's thousands of islands. And a lot of them are world-class vacation spots. So
Yeah.
and then you get the Western amenities similar to Bali. You get the
Mhm.
the Western food and Western sort of lifestyle mixed in with Asian lifestyle, which is awesome. Can you tell me a little bit about like when you decided to start Imprint Genius?
Yeah. So I mean, I started my company freshman year of college
Mhm.
in my dorm room. So it wasn't even like it's almost like an accidental thing. I started just kind of selling these like little kind of gadgets around campus, and then that grew into a promotional products distributorship.
Mhm.
So it didn't start off as like a direct kind of sourcing agency. We started off just sourcing products that I call corporate merchandise, and we were able to go and build a pretty unique catalog and client list because we were sourcing outside of the industry. In the beginning, I was, sourcing everything, direct from China. And I didn't even realize that there was this whole massive supply chain domestically for, promotional products and all that kind of stuff. So eventually we tapped into the US, essentially distributor and decoration network, which has been really beneficial for us and diversifying the supply chain. But I was able to, grow and build a large company in that space, going direct to China. And then we scaled out our technology, scaled out our client base, and then eventually started to tap into becoming a general sourcing agent and working with a lot more kind of like e-commerce sellers, aggregators, etc. And I love the transition over to being like a general kind of sourcing agent, and that's where the company really started growing.
Nice. What were some of the early struggles, and how did you overcome them?
I'd say that early struggles were like finding the right partners. So I mean, there's so many different suppliers you can work with, factories you can work with, partners on a technology side. I was just kind of getting my footing, still a college student, kind of trying managing everything together. And I think we made, in the beginning, some bad choices on like partners and how we could, to scale the business. And now we really try to, have as much control as possible, have as many team members as possible, managing a lot of processes and technology in-house. And that's been a huge help in keeping the business, super stable and giving, consistent quality to our customers.
Besides the fact that like you grew up around manufacturing, right? What would you say what makes Imprint Genius unique from other companies?
So I would say that we definitely have when it comes to sourcing for, e-commerce, we have a very strong e-commerce background. So I have a very strong understanding of, more than just on like a product level, what the product's needed. How can we build out a strong supply chain for our e-commerce brand? What does a modern e-commerce brand need from a product standpoint, from a delivery standpoint, from a production standpoint? And then kind of tying that into a more of like a 4PL approach versus just being a sourcing agent. Like, how are we looking at, creating efficiencies across like the entire supply chain? And I think that's what kind of led to a lot of our success working with different e-commerce brands.
Nice. So can you give like an example?
We were able to, a good example was going to be like, we have like a good case study on our website which is with a subscription box company that was all e-commerce based, and they needed to, revamp their whole supply chain to lower their cost of goods, but also create something that they could consistently replenish their inventory, replenish it way faster. So we built out a more efficient supply chain where we were doing all production overseas, running consolidation, running multiple ship times, right? We built out Gantt charts to create all these efficiencies. And then we were able to streamline their whole supply chain, take over everything from them, and then save them about $250,000 a year between logistics, production, and then they could shut down majority of their US kitting and fulfillment systems. So I think I don't know if I explained that super clearly, but because we understood like the fundamentals of how their business functioned from an e-commerce side, we were able to go and create a lot of efficiencies more than just on the product side, on like a whole supply chain side. And the majority of their cost savings were actually more on like we're outside of just cutting costs on like an FOB price,
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. So like, I guess to simplify it for maybe somebody that doesn't understand, I would say that, okay, so there's one aspect of cutting down on the production costs, right? That helps obviously majorly, right? And that understanding is on the manufacturer side, like how are they working? Are they working with multiple suppliers? Like all these different things, making sure that the quality is good, so you don't have returns and from on the state side, or whatever country you're selling in. But then there's also the aspect of the shipping. Can we make the shipping cost more efficient? Those kind of things. And then there's also the side of the actual process of the e-commerce side when the products are actually in country, and sort of having a 360-degree view on the situation. I think I understand what you mean. So just to simplify it for the audience as well. And yeah, I mean, I've experienced the same things with some of our previous clients, more on the production side of things. And then production and shipping side of things, where because we understand that sometimes, like, okay, you're wondering, like, why is my product quality inconsistent, for example, and then you go into the factory and you find out that the factory is outsourcing some of the product production to multiple suppliers, and then you try to consolidate the manufacturing to one supplier, for example. So there's consistencies there, and then you save money and all that stuff. So yeah, that's cool. So what skills do you think you've developed actually over the years, or over the time that you've been running your business?
I'd say the biggest skill I've developed has been on a I guess like emotional intelligence side, and how to effectively run a team. Like, as you know, like, we can't just do this all solo. We need to depend on other people, and understanding how to grow a team, motivate a team, especially like a global team, right? With different cultures of understandings. I think that ties into, how manage your employees, but also you're managing your relationships with, your factories, your partners, etc. So I think that I've, drastically improved on how I do that, and how I act as a manager.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well. When you work by yourself, you're only thinking about yourself, like, what do I need to do? What do I, all those things. And then when you start hiring people, one of the first things I noticed, at least personally, was, oh, I have to think about, like, what they need to do as well as my stuff. I can't just, I can't just be like thinking about my things. I have to figure out what they're going to do, and assign it in an effective way. And then, of course, as your business grows, you get to a stage where you have managers. Now you have to, like, sort of have the managers figure out those kind of things, and then you have your process, stuff like that involved. So I definitely can relate to that. Just on the manufacturing side of things, on the China side of things, having grown up going and dealing with your dad's factory and stuff like that, like, I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, what is your feeling around dealing with China when it comes to manufacturing?
Yeah, so I'd say that I had a good upbringing in the fact that it's very cool to me. Like, I was always very excited about dealing with China. I think a lot of people hear, oh, you work with China, like, there's such like almost like a negative connotation around it. But I was able to really find like an affinity for it, for the Chinese culture, working with Chinese people. We do a lot outside China now as well, which has been a really cool experience as well. Doing production. I was visiting factories in Thailand, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Turkey, Indonesia, and seeing the differences between dealing with a Chinese supplier versus dealing with an Indonesian supplier or a Turkish supplier. That's been really interesting as well. But it really does make you kind of appreciate how all the benefits of working with China, and the efficiencies, and just how great the overall experience can be.
Yeah, because, like, obviously, it's obviously, to everybody right now, there's a weird energy between the Western world and China, to say the least. But, like, I mean, I still remind people that, like, the politics is the politics. Like, the people in China are amazing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The people are fantastic. Dealing with the factories is difficult because of cultural differences, but you can figure that out. Like if you put in the work and the time and the understanding, and then for somebody like yourself who's spent years going there and has experienced all of these things, it must be a little bit easier than for people that are like trying to deal with somebody on Alibaba, right? Like from the States, right? So yeah, but yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that like of course we should diversify the sourcing of productions and things like that, but I don't think we should be the politics into the manufacturing side of things. Uh, all right, so I Imprint Genius. So like you're running it remotely, right? So is that because of COVID? Were you living in China before, or were you always like in Miami and different countries?
Yeah, so I mean, I was honestly still in college
Yeah.
until probably 3 years ago. So I was running things from there,
Mhm.
and then as soon as the goal was to get over to Asia and get to China and kind of run things from there, but it was very limited. From when
Yeah.
like I graduated, I graduated. I didn't even graduate college. I graduated college, but my ceremony was virtual, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as essentially Asia opened up, I flew over and I started working, sourcing from countries that were open.
Yeah.
And I've been kind of living in Asia, and now I'm really excited to get back to China next month for Canton. And
Oh, so
you know,
you're like a COVID child, you know?
something like that.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting because like I mean, I don't know, I was here pre-COVID, so my story is a little bit different. Everybody who's probably watching this knows. I was on vacation in Indonesia actually,
Mhm.
and Bali, when COVID happened. And I like, for me, like I don't pay attention so much to the news unless it's like relevant to stuff that I'm doing. And also I don't trust the news so much. Like I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist in some aspects. So I'm in Indonesia and like I'm partying, I'm going out, I'm doing whatever I'm doing on vacation because it was during Chinese New Year. And then I get like a flurry of messages one day on my phone, like,
Mhm.
yo, hey, are you okay? Like, do you know about this Wuhan flu and this and that? And I'm like, oh. So I'm like, no, man, I'm in Bali, baby. Like, well, you know what I mean? I'm chilling. Like, you know what I mean? So then I started looking into it. I was like, oh, okay, this might be a problem. And luckily I left a little bit before Chinese New Year actually started, like the holiday, because if I had stayed like, let's say 2 or 3 days, they wouldn't have allowed me to come into Indonesia. And I
Wow.
wouldn't have been able to go into Philippines because I flew directly from Guangzhou to Indonesia.
Mhm.
So I was there for a month, which was no schedule, but my plane ticket got canceled. And then
Mhm.
yeah, it got canceled, and then I was like trying to figure out what I was gonna do. I wanted to stay in the same time zone as China so I could still work with the team. And then I was already thinking about spending half of the year in the Philippines, half of the year in China. So that's how I ended up in Manila. And yeah, so that's the story.
Wow. It's crazy.
Yeah, 3 years later, now I have a dog, girlfriend, dog, girlfriend, cat.
Oh my God.
No, the cat does a rescue. He's temporary. We're trying to find him trying to get him adopted.
Yeah, that's what they all say.
Just going into the closing questions, what is the smallest thing you've done that's brought you the largest results? So the 80/20 principle.
Honestly, I might go into something more personal. I'd say like meditation has
Yeah.
been like a really small thing that I has drastically improved my mental health, my lifestyle, my work efficiency. Just like I know the difference between spending 5 minutes a day and doing my morning meditation and not. I could drastically see a let's say I don't do the meditation, I will see a huge decrease in overall production productivity throughout the day and how much I'm able to get done. So I'd say, getting these basic apps like Headspace and just getting into kind of a routine with that, it will do wonders for your life.
Nice. Yeah, I use Headspace as well. I haven't been as consistent in the last year or so, but I started using Headspace probably 2000, I want to say 2016. When I say, yeah, like I was going through a very stressful period with the business, and I was just trying to figure out like how can I manage my stress levels and things like that. And I'd done a little bit of meditation before, but it was cool using Headspace because of the because it's guided meditation, right? And then there's very, very specific topics that you can go into. So like the first time I did a presentation, there was a meditation on presentations, like, and then I was nervous. So like listening to before my presentation calmed me down, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I would agree with that for sure. Okay, what's one thing that you think and believe that if you told people, people would think you're crazy?
I think most people think I'm crazy for just like living in Asia in general. Um,
That's because they
that's
don't know. They don't know what's going on here, man.
exactly. I don't know what they're missing. That's probably like the most common like thing I get. They're like, how do you run your company remotely and do all this and kind of do the whole digital nomad life? And people think I'm definitely crazy and ridiculous, but once you start doing it, it completely changes your life and how you look at, your relationship with work and travel and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely recommend if you have the flexibility to, kind of be remote, go travel, live your life. We only have one life. So
3 books, podcasts, or vlogs that you want to recommend to people.
yeah, I mean, so I'd say
Three total. Doesn't have to be 3 each.
I'd say my favorite like podcasts would probably be like How I Built This, which is definitely like a pretty popular podcast, but it can definitely help with getting over being scared of opening your own company and like seeing how other people have been able to kind of grow theirs. Limited Supply is fantastic podcast, kind of in the e-commerce space. And then
You
blog.
said limited or limit supply?
Limited Supply.
Limited supply. Okay, cool.
Really good if you're trying to get into e-commerce and try to understand the space more. They have a really strong podcast and kind of pulse on things going on within the e-commerce world. And then blog, I'd say the Sourcing Guy blog. So just plug my I'm launching the Sourcing Guy now. It's essentially our new content personal brand. So I'm going to be having like a full podcast. Not podcast. I'm going to be having a full like product sourcing course, teach people how to source products. We have like 30 plus articles on all the fundamentals of sourcing products, and then building out like our global guide, which is teaching people how to source products from different countries around the world. So, okay, you want to go and source from Cambodia? Like, how the hell do you do that? This is a like full breakdown of like everything you need to know about working with Cambodia before you go and fly out there.
That's cool. And what is the best way for the audience to reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like send me a DM on Instagram. Go on the Sourcing Guy, send me a message on there. My Instagram's at Isaac Hetz, so it's just my ISAACHETZ. And if anyone's ever in Bali or in China wants to meet up, hit me up. Happy to meet up.
Is there anybody that you think I should interview that you know?
Yeah. My buddy Keon from Sourcing with Keon. He makes
I might know him. Sounds familiar. Sourcing with Keon sounds familiar. I might have met him.
He makes really awesome content around sourcing and supply chain. It's been building out, just did a really cool course with Founder on product development and stuff like that. So, if you're going to be at content this year, we'll all get together and I'll introduce you to him. But he's a beast in the space and really, really nice guy.
Cool. Fantastic. Thanks, Isaac. Anything that you want to touch on that I missed?
Not really. I mean, this is a great time being on here. Excited to get together in the Philippines and maybe in China, and let's see how we can help each other out.
Cheers. So if you want to reach out to us, it's podcast@sourcefinasia.com. Of course, sourcefinasia.com /contact us, and check out the YouTube channel. Though this will be a video cast, so posted on YouTube and MIC as well. And yeah, cheers.